Hey everybody, it's Chris Sims here from ComicsAlliance.com, and this is Here's the Thing. And for this week's episode, we have another viewer question that I'm going to try and tackle. Jocelyn, do we have that ready? Oh, thank you. Let's see here. At Dan Spaceman has requested an explanation of the arc where Punisher was an angel. Angel Punisher. Punisher, Volume 4. Okay. Alright, are we going to do this? Okay, let's talk about Angel Punisher. Here's the thing about the Punisher. In comics, the Punisher is in a lot of ways a very revolutionary character. That kind of gun-toting anti-hero really hadn't been seen before, but only in comics. In other media, like movies and pulp novels, characters like the Punisher had existed for a long time. In fact, it's often considered to be a complete ripoff of Don Pendleton's Mac Bullen, the Executioner. The veteran who becomes the killing machine. But in comics, that character was new, and Jonah Hex is the same way. See, Westerns had done morally ambiguous heroes for quite some time, going back to the 60s. So it was kind of old hat in movies, thanks to the Man with the No Name trilogy. But comics had never really touched on that until Jonah Hex came around. They were very clean-cut Western heroes, like the Two-Gun Kid or the Rawhide Kid. Jonah Hex was different, but in mass media, in the larger picture, he's really just another character. That's one of the reasons I don't think the Jonah Hex movie can really work, because we've already got the better version of Jonah Hex as a movie character. Same thing goes with the Punisher. The Punisher movies hold a special place in my heart, but they're not exactly what I'd call good or well done. And the problem is that we've seen better versions of that character in action movies for years and years and years. How many times have we seen the character whose family gets killed and he has to go on a trail of vengeance and he's a really violent ex-military guy? That happens all the time in movies. But with Punisher in comics, superhero comics had never really seen a character like that. A dude who shows up with a big skull on his chest, but he's the guy we're rooting for. So he was really instantly popular. He clicks instantly when Jerry Conway introduces him in Punisher, along with Ross Andru. So the Punisher gets a big ongoing series fairly quickly. There's the miniseries by Stephen Grant and Mike Zeck, Circle of Blood, which is awesome. And then the ongoing series follows shortly thereafter, Punisher Volume 2. And it goes on through a bunch of what I like to call the VHS-era stories. See, the Punisher, being a kind of derivative character, is something that Mike Baron really realized almost immediately. You can see it in the way he plots his stories. That's why so many stories from the Mike Baron Punisher, which you can find in the Essential Punisher Volume 2, Volume 1 is the early appearances in the miniseries, but so many of these stories read like weird versions of movies of the time. There's a story that's a lot like Class of 1984. There's a story that's a lot like Stone Cold, the movie with Brian Bosworth. There's a story where the Punisher kills Charles Manson, or Charlie Sampson, the Marvel Universe version of Charles Manson. And the reason for that is that Mike Baron knows that if he's going to compete with these kind of mass media characters that are a lot like the Punisher, he's just going to have to go way over the top with it. And that's what he does. He's on the book for 5 years, and it's pretty amazing. They're so VHS tape that I really love them, even today. The problem is that that kind of runs its course eventually. There's only so many times you can go to the video store and check out the new release wall and basically do that story as a comic. So the Punisher gets more and more popular as the 90s go on. He goes from this 4-issue miniseries to an ongoing series that runs for 117 issues, and then gets 3 ongoing series at the same time. That's something that very few characters have done. Like Wolverine has not had 3 solo series going at the same time. Batman, Superman, and Punisher. Really, that's it. Spider-Man? Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, and the Punisher. The problem is that the Punisher series really oversaturate the market with them, because you don't just have War Journal, Warzone, and Punisher. You also have the Summer Special, the Back to School Special. And yeah, Punisher back-to-school specials. That was a thing that really happened. Holiday specials. They go twice monthly in the summer months to do big crossovers. A lot of Marvel Comics did that in the 90s, back before double shipping was a thing. So, the Punisher has this really big rise, and then people just suddenly kind of get tired of him, and it drops. Punisher and Warzone and War Journal all get cancelled in a story called Countdown, where all these characters come back. Outlaw, the British Punisher, the Lady Punisher shows up in that story. And then they're not quite sure what to do with the Punisher. Because really the only thing you can do with him is make stories that go way over the top. So they try to figure out new stuff. John Ostrander and Tom Lyle come on for Punisher Volume 3. And Ostrander is one of my favorite writers in comics history. He wrote Suicide Squad, which is amazing. And Suicide Squad's full of those morally complicated, morally compromised characters like you get in Punisher. So he does the one thing that nobody had done with the Punisher yet, which is Punisher joins the mob. And it's okay, but it obviously was at the tail end of a Punisher series, or at the tail end of the public's interest in the Punisher, so it doesn't really last. It goes 18 issues, which in the mid-90s is very short. 18 issues is great today. If something runs 18 issues before getting canceled or rebooted, we are ecstatic. But that Punisher series doesn't really work. It's probably because he hangs out with the Executioner a lot in it. So, the Punisher ends, and at that point, nobody's really sure what to do with him. They know they've got this character that's marketable. They know they've got this character with a great look. They've got this character with a huge existing fan base. They're just not sure what to do. Because once you've done the regular Punisher stories, once you've done Punisher joins the mob, once you've done the crazy Punisher is afraid of water, and so he has to get a jet ski, and you just rented a jet ski to the Punisher. So kiss that baby goodbye. Once you do that, where do you go with it? Now, at the same time, another long-running character had just seen his series end after a shift in direction. The Mark Waid Daredevil that's running now that everybody liked because it was kind of lighthearted change? Well, in 1996-ish, maybe 1995, Carl Kiesel and Cary Nord came onto Daredevil and did a kind of lighthearted reboot. They made him more of a swashbuckler than he had been. More of a Spider-Man type character. And in fact, Spider-Man appears in those issues more than he had in a long while. Of course, it was the Ben Reilly Spider-Man, and that's a whole other video. But they had tried to inject new life in a franchise that had been increasingly dark since Frank Miller. The Miller stuff, the Innocenti stuff, that had all kind of followed the same direction. That's all really good. But Kiesel and Nord tried to take it in a different place. And I really liked it. I think it's one of the best, most underrated superhero comics of all time. But I don't think it really worked. Even when they lowered the price. I think it was just 99 cents when other comics were $1.50. So that gets canceled after Joe Kelly comes on and does a story where Daredevil goes to work with S.H.I.E.L.D. and gets his sight back because he has plastic surgery to change his face. It's really complicated. The less said, the better. So at the same time, Marvel goes bankrupt. And when you're bankrupt, you have nothing to lose. So they decide that one of the things they should do is take these marketable characters that they didn't really know what to do with and just do anything they wanted with them. Because when you've gone bankrupt, what do you have left? Nothing. You're going to keep Spider-Man, you're going to keep the Avengers, but anybody who's not currently headlining their own whole corner of the universe, fair game, right? So then comes Marvel Knights, and you get the Marvel Knights relaunch in 1998 of a bunch of different characters. You get Kevin Smith and Joe Quesada doing Daredevil. You get Christopher Priest and J.G. Jones doing Black Panther. You get a couple of different things, and it's a huge success. It's such a huge success that Joe Quesada becomes the editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics. A guy who had previously run a company with Jimmy Palmiotti called Event that really just published their own comic, Ash, that not a lot of people remember today. It was about a superhero fireman. So Quesada and Palmiotti become the Marvel Knights guys, and it's huge. It's a huge relaunch, and I'm not going to lie, a lot of it's because Kevin Smith on Daredevil. I don't think that run holds up really well, but you'd be lying if you said it didn't bring people back into comic shops who were really interested in getting into Marvel Comics. They also do The Punisher, and that brings us to Punisher Volume 4. Like I said, everything was fair game. They'd done what they could with The Punisher as a crime book, as a superhero-ish book. as this weird over-the-top thing. So they get Mike Golden, they get Christopher Golden, Tom Snigoski, and Bernie Wrightson. And Jimmy Palmiotti inks it, but Bernie Wrightson doing Punisher. That should be a big selling point on its own. And they decide they're going to try something with the Punisher that had never been done before, for a variety of reasons. And I guess, from going back and reading it earlier, that the idea here was that they wanted to tie it closer into the Marvel Universe. Because the Marvel Universe isn't a real good place to do a crime story. Even Daredevil, the gritty Frank Miller book, has magic ninjas in it. So, if you're going to do a crime story, you have to do a crime story that sort of embraces the Marvel Universe, right? That was the theory. So, what do we know about the Marvel Universe? Well, there's superheroes, there's weird stuff that happens when you get exposed to radiation, there's mutants, there's magic. Okay, magic. So, there's magic, and we definitely know there's, like, angels and demons and stuff. So then, theoretically, people should have guardian angels, right? Well, if the Punisher's family had a guardian angel, then obviously he wasn't doing his job when they got killed. And that is the plot of Punisher Volume 4. Punisher kills himself. Off-screen, by the way. It doesn't happen at the end of Punisher number 18, and by the time Punisher Volume 4 number 1 comes out, he's already dead. I think maybe it happens in the Over the Edge stuff. I know that's where he kills Nick Fury. Nick Fury got better, don't worry about it. But I don't think so. I think he just shows up one day dead, which is a weird way to launch your series. So, the idea is that Punisher, because of all the killing he's done in life, gets recruited into the war between heaven and hell. And he's recruited into the war between heaven and hell by his family's guardian angel, who was asleep at the wheel on the day they all got killed in the park. That's weird enough. That's not where it stops. It turns out, at the end of that series, that what really happened was that the gangster who killed the Punisher's family and sent him on this path of, however many years of just murdering dudes straight up, was himself a demon in human form that had a skull for a face, and that's why Punisher wears a skull, because he's actually doing human sacrifices for this demon lord. That's the plot they went with. That's Punisher Volume 4. Now, I'm all for making interesting new things out of characters. I'm all for doing stuff that you haven't seen before, because that's the only way characters grow and change. But that is way out there. That kind of changes the fundamental being of the Punisher in a way that negates everything he'd done before. Punisher goes for 117 issues, Volume 1. War Journal goes for over 50. I think Warzone goes for about 30, so there's like a 3-year period there where it's 3 times a month. If you're reading those comics, if you're a fan of the Punisher, and I should point out, I read all of those comics in about a month. I read 300 Punisher comics in a month, because I wanted to find out more about him. And now I love the Punisher, because I went through that experience. But if you're reading those comics, if you're a fan of the Punisher, if you get behind what he does, then you don't want that to be revealed to be all part of human sacrifice on the part of demons, Because then you're rooting for the demons, secretly. And nobody's motivation in those 200 and some comics makes sense. Why did the Punisher kill all those guys? Demons. It wasn't because he was mad. It wasn't because he doesn't like criminals. It was just because demons. Now, it should be pointed out that very early in the Mike Baron run, in fact, it's reprinted in this one, I believe, Punisher does get in a weird fight with the Devil. The Devil, who is running a cult in New York that is supposed to be like a mission, but it's actually a cult, and he kills Jigsaw and then brings Jigsaw back to life. It's really weird. It is never really brought up after this 3-issue sequence, and I think Mike Baron kind of realized that that was not the best choice he could have made, so he kind of kept that stuff to Badger and Nexus and the other stuff he was writing at the time. So there is kind of precedent for it. Sort of. But to recast the entire saga as some weird thing about demons, and to say that Punisher was inspired by a demon's face that he didn't know existed to wear his costume with the big skull on it, it's too much. It's a step too far. And that's after you get the Guardian Angel stuff, and the stuff where you get his magic trench coat that he pulls out crazy glowing heaven guns out of. It's all too much. It breaks the character. So, 4 issues of that, and then a one-shot with Punisher and Wolverine. And that's it. It is never acknowledged again. Now, it is mentioned vaguely in Punisher Volume 5, number 1, which is the Garth Ennis, Steve Dillon, Welcome Back Frank series, where Punisher's like, yeah, that's not happening. I was dead and now I'm back alive, and the angels who wanted me to kill people for them can take a walk, Buster. And that's it. Because what they do after Punisher Volume 4 is realize they've gone too far. They realize they've pushed it in this weird direction. And so Ennis and Dillon come on, very fresh from their success doing Preacher at Vertigo, and they really pare it back down to the basics. And they're faced with the same problem, which is how do you make the Punisher interesting when he's already done all this stuff? How do you do something new with it? And they hit on a very elegant solution to it. The Volume 4 solution, the Angel Punisher solution, was to add stuff to the Punisher to make him, in theory, more interesting. So you get the angel stuff, the demon stuff, all that. The stuff that we'd never seen before. The solution in the Ennis and Dillon book was to make the villains more interesting. Because here's the thing about Punisher villains. There aren't any. They don't last. The Punisher, by his very nature, kills his villains, and we don't get to use them again. There's Jigsaw, Barracuda. That's it. That's the only people who survive a fight with the Punisher to last another day. And because of that, you don't get to build up any villains. You get these weird, interesting one-shot guys, like Charlie Sampson, or like the dude who lives in the biosphere who has a diamond-dusted yo-yo that he uses to kill people that Punisher has to break in. Or the guy who goes to a satellite, so Punisher has to hijack a space shuttle and kill him in Punisher G-Force, which is a graphic novel by Mike Barron, which is amazing. He hijacks a space shuttle. It's great. So you get these one-shot villains, but they don't really get developed. So Ennis and Dillon, and later Ennis and Gorlin Parlov, and all the other artists that he works with over the course of his 8 years on Punisher, they put the focus on the villains. The first half of every 6-issue Punisher story written by Garth Ennis, it's all the same. It follows the same formula. What they do is they make the villains people that you really, really want to see get killed. The story of the Slavers is probably the best example of this, because halfway through that arc, you're like, yeah, I want these guys to die really badly. And they do. The Punisher comes in at the end of it. You don't get a lot of motivation about the Punisher. You don't get a lot of insight into what he does. He just kills them because he hates them and they need to die. And the trick is making you believe that. So, Punisher Volume 4 did way too much. Punisher Volume 5 and 6 and 7, which are the Garth Ennis stuff, those really pared him back down so that they could, in a way, rehabilitate the character, because you needed to after it had gotten so far out of control. So the Punisher now is a much more viable character because of that, because they recentered him. They gave him that core back. So you can do the Punisher in the Marvel Universe dealing with weird stuff like magic, which is what the Matt Fraction and Rick Remender stories do. You can put him back in the Marvel Universe and have him deal with more kind of ground level stuff, with military stuff, which is what the Greg Rucka and Chichetto run did. So in a way, a lot of good stuff came out of Punisher Volume 4 because it just went too far. But in another way, Punisher Volume 4 is terrible. Sorry. Bernie Wrightson drawing Punisher should have been way better. So that does it for this week's Here's the Thing. Thanks for asking that question. If you've got a question you'd like to see me tackle in a future episode, feel free to let me know at my Twitter, which is @theISB, or you can leave a comment right here at comicsalliance.com when Here's the Thing goes up. And thanks for watching, everybody, and cheers! I'll see you next week.